Marcel Foster is up next. Marcel is the CEO and co-founder of Performance Hypothesis, a Georgia-based company that works to provide tools to better understand health outcomes of arts and culture programs. Marcel was instrumental in spearheaded the passing of H.R. 1007, Georgia's brand new Arts and Mental Health House Resolution, the first of its kind in this country. And it passed unanimously, right? Incredible. So we all want to hear about that. My hope is that this policy work can serve as a roadmap for us here in Maine as we work to expand policy and community initiatives around arts and health. Marcel holds a master's in public health from Emory University and has a background in theater arts. And without further ado, Marcel.
Let's give Jess a round of applause for bringing in donuts this morning. Got me started off on the right foot, so let's make sure here. Maybe having technical issues. Oh, nope. All right. Technical issues are me. So good afternoon, everybody. So who the heck am I? So as Jess had mentioned, performance hypothesis. We'll talk a little bit more about what we do, and I'll be talking a lot today about that. So we'll hold off on that. But I also serve as faculty with the Center for Arts in Medicine at University of Florida, where I got to meet Jill Sonke, if you know her. Some fun, exciting new news is I got accepted to a part-time and remote doctoral program with Oxford University. Yay! This will be Dr. Foster in 6 years. Wish me luck. I'll need a lot of art to process. And then also consult with the American Evaluation Association and the Jameel Arts and Health Lab. So those are some of my affiliations, but I'm also a human being, and I'm a human being who loves Maine. So in that top left corner is a picture of me and my best friend who lives in Owl's Head, and when we visited Bar Harbor 2 years ago. In the middle there is me and my fiance, as of February, so it's been an exciting year. That's Ari, and we're putting up our mezuzah. And then raise your hand if you know Judy Collins. Yes, I'm in the right room. Okay, so Judy Collins is my favorite folk singer, and I play the piano, and so this is what I do to keep myself sane, is play lots of Judy Collins on my piano. So that's who I am. Performance hypothesis. We are a remote group. We have folks who work in New York City, in North Carolina, California, and today I'll be speaking in detail about a lot of programs in Georgia. But we do have projects. Naj had brought up the military arts. We have an amazing contract looking at creative forces, which uses creative art therapies to treat PTSD among military personnel and veterans, and definitely have a national network looking at strategic planning and evaluation of arts and health. So my goal today, Christina, I wrote this down, is to talk through quickly 3 case studies of evaluation, and then we'll try to spend most of our time talking about the policy, because really that's the most exciting part. I never said that. All right, so we'll just go ahead and dive right in. So what is the difference between research and evaluation? What are folks' thoughts? What are some key differences between these two things? There's no wrong answers. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So we had a participant say, for those online, research is a collection of data, whereas evaluation is what is the data saying? Other opinions or other things you've heard of, oh, this is research, this is an evaluation, or vice versa. Yes, in the back. Yeah, of course. Mhm. Yes, accurate statement. I'm going to fail at summarizing that. Manage expectations. Someone attempts to do research and attempts to really focus in on the research questions, but as they're doing it, they can't help themselves get lost in the evaluation of the other questions that arise. Did I summarize it correctly? Yes. You bring yourself to the research too. I love that. Okay, I think I saw one more opinion. Yes. Great. Did we all attend? Let me repeat that first. So the question was, it was that the research is the collection, the analyzing, and then the evaluation is more the synthesis, seeing how it interplays. Did I summarize that correctly? Great. So did we listen to Tanya this morning or something about Patricia Levy's research and evaluation? Um, so yes, what other opinions around research is that research is highly generalizable. Involves university ethics committees or IRBs. Evaluations may not have to be generalizable. It's just specific to a program. My joke is if you ask one evaluator what the difference between research and evaluation, you'll get 17 different answers. You'll definitely get that from me one day. But in general, today we'll be talking about both research and evaluation. And I think for today, for this presentation, research is more that intended of like our findings will have recommendations for general populations. They're generalizable, whereas evaluation is much more specific. You may not generalize. You may only share it with the people you're working with, and that's the point. It's just insights to improve a program. Make sense? All right. So our first evaluation project is equitable vaccines. Equitable vaccines was a project started in Georgia back in 2022. It was originally funded through the CDC, and the goals were to promote the evidence base of the fact that COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective, and we also wanted to prioritize vulnerable communities. So, along those lines, hmm, okay, IT challenges. They are watching, yeah. Somebody opposed to that opinion. Wait, I think I got it. Ah, perfect. Okay, we're all set. Yeah, thank you. He saved the day once again. All right, so long story short, we all remember back in 2020, all of us were somewhere that we remember when we were all told we had to go into lockdown. In Georgia, there's a small town called Albany where a community of people got together in early March for a funeral. The community happened to be entirely Black, and from that point, they were identified as a super spreader. A family of people going to a funeral and then being stigmatized as a super spreader. And so, what we see in statistical data is that not only, unfortunately, does stigmatization and racism still occur for Black communities, but it's even increased among the rural Southeast communities. That's unfortunately matched with a statistical reality that's hard to wrap our heads around, but that COVID symptoms are disproportionately more severe for Black populations, as well as the rate of infections. So to that end, with a theater based in Atlanta called Out of Hand Theater, we won the CDC funding that was specifically geared at using the arts to address vaccine confidence. With that, and I'll talk through this in detail, but we prioritize rural Black communities for several years related to using culturally responsive art related to vaccine confidence. So you see here this wheel. This is adapted from culturally responsive evaluation. The bottom line is we started with focus groups where Black facilitators who were from these communities led conversations and asked, what comes up for you when you think about the COVID-19 vaccine? What kinds of messages are you hearing? What would it take for you to believe that you could have more confidence in this vaccine? We then took that information, collaborated with artists, and created a number of different artistic assets that directly spoke to the themes. The artists, too, were also from these communities across Georgia. We then worked with the Department of Public Health and hosted a number of different programs across the state and then gathered feedback to understand the impact. So in evaluation, the question, of course, is, what was the impact? We'll take a quick look here. If you just Google equitable vaccines, maybe put in Atlanta there or Georgia, you can watch all of these films that are there. You can read the comic books that were developed. We have a film, Comfort, which already is very dated because it speaks to COVID-19 in 2021. And that was somehow many decades ago. We then have something a little bit more updated, Vax It Like Jordan. And now we're now developing artistic assets for Latino and Hispanic communities throughout the state. So we had a really fun animation as well as a comic book strip. So as these events were happening, we had facilitators present and observing, and after every single event, the facilitators wrote down and reported exactly what happened, or participant observation, which is a qualitative method. In general, our overall qualitative findings, and we do have a publication in the Journal of Qualitative Health where you can read much more detail than what's here, but that in year 1, year 2, the overall themes were mistrust of the US government and that there's a lot of misinformation surrounding the vaccine. We also saw in program 2, as years went on, things changed, and that there were community motivators to get the vaccine as well as individual motivators. So it was interesting to see that over time. Here is a part that's interesting to me, the evaluator, the quantitative, some quantitative metrics. You can see that across these events, we had a vaccine uptake of 727 people. You can see overwhelmingly they were Black people between the ages of 36 to 64. We also had surveys in addition to the qualitative data where we assessed, what are the reasons for vaccine deliberation, as well as what is your vaccine status. So this program ran from 2022 up until 2025, and it actually scaled with other organizations who adopted this same model with a big multiplex arts organization called the Woodruff Arts Center and Black Health, an organization that focuses on, you guessed it, Black health throughout Georgia. And in March 2025, we all got news that we were not allowed to do this anymore. The White House did what it did. It's all public information, and so it was stalled. However, I come bearing good news. We just got funding from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. That is explicitly prioritizing funds that were taken away from the White House that prioritize racial equity. So our next event will be May 5th. We'll have 10 events over this next year, 6 that will be in Spanish, 4 that will be in English, and I'll have more and more data to share. So I know we're on a bit of a time crunch, so I'm just gonna go. Why don't we take a moment for 2 questions, because that was so much information. What kinds of questions can I address? Oh, yeah.
Have you used this approach for other, I think about colon rectal screening, especially in 40 to 50-year-olds. It's been a huge issue across the country. So do you see this
Yeah. So a great question about using this outside of just vaccines, specifically colorectal. That is such a good idea. And if you, yes, so we'll talk more about that. And yes, I think when we published our qualitative report, and also feel free to email me. It's firewalled. There's a paywall, so I can send you the PDF. But this was like put under health comms. But there's lots of different ways and lots of different topics. The strategy is not health comms, and culturally responsive health comms does not fall specific to vaccines. So we haven't done colorectal cancer yet, but that's a great idea. I think, we have another question. I'll just summarize it. That's okay. That's a good question. One opportunity that we're looking into is actually reaching out to like Pfizer and Moderna, because obviously they want their vaccines to get out. And by working with community partners, certainly they care about the data. I think the federal government cared about the data. They don't so much right now. But then, of course, there's philanthropy, as Naj was talking about, that Robert Wood Johnson, they made it a point to prioritize these kinds of data that were dismissed. So I hope that answers your question. Cool. Cool. Yeah. All right. So we'll move ahead to case scenario number 2 for those visual art fans. And it is a program with the High Museum. Raise your hand if you've heard of the High Museum. Oh, great. Perfect. More than I thought in Maine. So the High Museum is a visual art museum in Atlanta. And we did win a National Endowment for the Arts grant, research innovation. It was the first museum to win that grant, and then it was taken away. But then we were able to identify an anonymous donor who subsidized it. Yay! And so it is looking quite simply, in quotes, at the health impacts of viewing visual art. So we defined the domains of health and well-being as social, emotional, intellectual, physical, and spiritual. So yay, I'm glad to hear that. So another time we will dive into how and who we cited for each of these domains. We'll be hearing very soon about emotional and social from Jeremy Nobel and belonging. But diving into the program, this past year, we accessed 3 programs at the museum. The first is Access for All, which is free admission programs throughout the museum. There's Oasis, which is a time every 3rd Saturday of the month that allows people to come together. And then there's UPS Second Sundays, which is just the doors are open to everybody. So through these programs, we recruited all kinds of different museum attendees. In this case, we used quantitative, qualitative, and arts-based methods. Thank you, Tanya, for doing such a great job this morning and outlining Patricia Levy and the others. I don't have to spend any time explaining that now as I planned. So super confusing schematic. Let's take a second to I created this, and I'm not a visual artist. I am not a graphic designer. I have begged the museum for a year to get a graphic designer to update this. So bear with me, visual artists in the room. So as you can see on the blue on the top, those are the 3 programs. In the middle, we'll come back to that. You can see on the bottom, on that orange, those are the 5 domains that we're measuring. This is what's interesting to me as the evaluator, is that we have 4 methodologies we're using. We're using body metrics. We're measuring the cardiac response, the pulse of the folks who are walking around the museum. We're using surveys, quantitative. We're doing interviews, qualitative, and we're doing participatory photography, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So because we're a little limited on time, I'll just focus on two of the metrics, and one is the physical metrics, and we are collaborating with a group called Lab Front. They are specialists in measuring pulses and doing looking at cardiac data related to pulses. And so with IRB and ethical approval, we collaborated with Brunel University down in Georgia. We handed out Garmin watches, and people agreed to walk around the museum, different aspects of the museum, and look at the art. We're still bringing in the data. We don't really have any firm hypotheses because nothing like this has really been published before. So we're going to look and see and publish out what happens and keep you all posted. Another method we used was participatory photography. This is what I think of as an extension of photo voice that Tanya talked about earlier. It's effectively, you're given a prompt and you're asked to take a photo. So take a photo of someone who inspires you, and then you write why that person inspires you. So you can see here, someone took a photo of this here, and they wrote in response to that painting, "It's weird, feels modern, while made in the 40s and 60s and being relatively modern, that seems like an eternity ago. It's awe-inspiring to know that the strangeness, uniqueness, and ideological discomfort and risk have existed longer than I have." So we had 45 of those that I had the honor of coding and finding the themes. If you're a qualitative researcher, I used thematic analysis. We can definitely nerd out about that later. One quick surprise that we found was there were quite a number of the 45 submissions. There were like 20 that specifically spoke to themes uplifting women and uplifting the history of women, which was not something that we were necessarily going to see, but it was just this huge theme that came across the visitors. And so the data is in. Probably in 2 months or so, we'll get the manuscript submitted, and we'll send it along to Amy and the others for you all to read. But we finished 535 surveys, 41 participatory photographs, 103 heart rate captures, and 30 interviews. So really rich, robust data that we'll use the mixed methods to look across. Quick questions about the museum study. Yes, and I can give you this. I don't believe that was a control factor. We did, they were in very specific parts of the museum, but in terms of the data that we're actually going to be able to share with the pulse rate, it's going to be pretty limited because there's just endless confounding factors. But it's a first step towards building something that'll be more structured. Yeah. Other quick questions? No, they were randomized. Yeah, so the High Museum, which was an incredible collaborator, they had a group of folks who sat there, and it was, I think, they asked every fifth person who passed the table, which, great. The researcher in me sings a happy song. Yeah. Randomize as much as possible, obviously. This was nobody's randomized clinical control trial. All right. So the third case scenario, my music fans, thank you to the harpist. So it turns out that music is great for you. Don't know if you knew that. And specifically, there's just an incredible amount of evidence related to music's impact on slowing the neurodegeneration process down for Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases. A triumvirate of performance hypothesis, Emory University, and Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. We did lots of pilot testing to make ourselves competitive, and we won a grant from the Alzheimer's Foundation of America to continue working with Dr. Monica Parker. She is in the middle there with the beautiful necklace. Dr. Monica Parker is an incredible a neurologist with the Guazetta Brain Institute at Emory University. And she called up me and my good friend at the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, Aaron, who's on the other end there, and said, I know that music has an impact, and I want my research participants to get the benefit of it. So me, loving research, loving biological data, I said, great, let's do fMRIs. And she said, absolutely not. And I said, why? And she goes, because I want the patients and the research participants to be uplifted. And I don't know if you've had an fMRI, but not the most uplifting experience. So me as a social scientist, I was like, yes, I'm quoting you forever on that. Social science matters. And we developed what? Surveys and interview guidelines. I pushed for an arts-based method, Tanya, but they wouldn't. Not my decision. And so what you see there was the testing of the surveys. We printed them out right after an orchestra concert and asked for their feedback on the quality of questions before it was finalized. These are some quick insights related to our pilot data, and these were only given to caregivers. One quick important nuance that I left out is that this particular research is not only looking at the impact of music for elders with memory loss, it's also looking at the impact of the caregivers. And so in this case, we're just looking at responses from the caregiver. You can see that there's strongly agree with joy being experienced, as well as the experience of excitement. We also found that the increased sense of connection to the people around them, that there was more disagree among those. And then there was even a stronger disagree when we asked the question if they noticed a positive change in behavior of the elder with whom they were caregiving. So these were pilot, and this as an evaluator is data that I love. When you find responses where there's strong disagreement, that's your opportunity for where you can improve your program and what you can focus on to have a stronger impact. So that was the quick review of Music is Medicine. The formal data collection hasn't yet begun. We're waiting on IRB approval. But quick questions about working with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra or Dr. Parker. Awesome. I think so too. All right, so we have plenty of time to talk about the most exciting thing, perhaps, policy change in Georgia. So we like to say that, or I like to think that nothing motivates better than rivalry. So Georgia, look what Georgia did. Come on, folks in Maine, let's step it up. All right, so this all started 2 years ago, and it started primarily with this woman you see in the center. Her name is Representative Kim Schofield. She came to an event just like this, and she's public about the fact that she's somebody who's living with lupus, and her brain exploded. And she said, we need to make this happen here in Georgia, and we need to make it happen now. And everybody else in that picture, you can see my friend Aaron Jones from the symphony again, and other friends, Juana and Alexia. We all said, all right, you're telling us to jump, how high? So in this, I'm going to recommend the 4 steps that we found to make this successful. And with this, we hope that you all will have your own legislation that Kim Schofield can look at, and we can get really aggravated and be like, oh, Maine, they did a whole appropriation of arts and healthcare. Who do they think they are? All right, so the first, have you ever met a politician who didn't like speaking? That's what I thought. So find a politician. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't, but ask them. Ask them, are you a fan of the arts? Do you have are you living with a chronic condition? Does your child, does your family have a chronic condition? If there's an illness, there is an arts method that addresses it, and there's probably a systematic review of all the evidence of it, and that will return to that. So you find that person one way or another, you ask Amy, you ask others, hey, who's somebody that you think will be really responsive to this? and you invite them to events just like this. Then they start getting big ideas, just like Kim Schofield got when we invited her to an event like this down in Atlanta. Then from there, you start doing some bipartisan wins. I'll tell you now that when Kim Schofield and I started 2 years ago, the original language, which it's on the internet, was leveraging the arts to address racism as a public health crisis. And guess how popular that was in December 2024? Yeah. So we adapted the language to arts for mental health. And that takes me to the second point. Identify bipartisan wins, or as I heard from Molly earlier today, diverse viewpoint wins. So what are they? And this was actually very important because in Georgia, there's a representative and he's speaking there, Representative Todd Jones. His tagline is relentless conservative, loves our current president, and also has a son with schizoaffective disorder. The quick story is because of Kim Schofield, we called him, we got him on the phone, he had us on speakerphone, we didn't know his wife was in the room, and we were pitching him, and he asked us the question, is there peer-reviewed evidence for this? And I held in my laugh, and I said, yes, there is, and we sent him like the 17 systematic reviews, just on one topic. And he saw it, he was impressed, but I guess what really changed the game for him is his wife was listening, and she said to him, and this comes back to Naj's point about the role of spouses, she said to him, can you imagine how much better our lives would have been in healthcare settings while we were caring for our son had we had access to what? The arts. Let's hear it. Had we had access to what? Exactly. So he said, I'm going to give this full support. And so he, Kim Schofield, and the other woman you see right behind him, Mary Margaret Oliver, teamed up and got 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats to support the initial bill. This does not happen without lots and lots of emails and persistence and just scheduling more Zoom calls than you want. But just stick with it because the wins come. And that leads to the next point is that every win is a major win. So every step of the way, celebrate, bring people together, send those emails, go get drinks, because when you start celebrating those wins, people really begin to feel that. And so then what occurred from there was after it was passed just as initial resolution with six signers, it was like, cool, yay, we did it. And then the representatives, Todd Jones himself, brought it to the floor for a vote where all 177, mostly Republican House representatives unanimously supported this. And that's what, yes, let's take a moment. And so it's through these steps that we got to this point. There's a lot that you're not going to be able to maintain, but once you find these champions who are passionate about it, they'll push it. This bill, this resolution did not need to go to the floor, but they brought it because it made it the difference between a legislative measure and actual legislation. And so now it'll be stored and used to push for appropriations, of course, in Georgia and in Maine and other states. So I'll end it here by reading this because I'm typically not a fan of my writing, but this one I think, I'm nobody's writer, Christina, but this one I think we did all right. And it was a big collaborative effort. So be it resolved by the Georgia House of Representatives that the essential role of artists, arts organizations, art therapists, and arts for health initiatives in supporting recovery from trauma, addressing mental health concerns and conditions, building community resilience, and increasing public safety. So that was our word. Yeah. So this is public. Copy it. It is, copy it, use it all you want. Don't use it. It doesn't necessarily have to be mental health, but that was the diverse viewpoint win in Georgia. That went over well. But if it's colorectal cancer or if it's really any arts and any health issue that is prevalent, opioid addiction, whatever it may be, really find that and find your champions within the House, because all of these House representatives, they want to tell the story of, I made bipartisan resolution happen. I did something unique for the state. So really, you're just helping them do their jobs. So with that said, we do have, I think, plenty of time for questions. And yes. It was about a 2.5 year process. So initially met Kim Schofield and invited her to a thing. Then she had the big idea. Then we wrote the first resolution that went nowhere. And then we waited for the next year's session this year. And then it had the success that it had. But that was just our experience. It can definitely go in the first year or not. Yes. Okay. Well, the resolution was passed on March 31st. So I can say with great confidence, no, as of right now, that is not the case. But that was the goal. And so one strategy that we took was that we really framed this to the representatives as, so a fact that I'm not proud of is that Georgia is 50 out of 50 for public funding for the arts. So I was like, all right, the standard rah, rah, rah arts advocacy lines are not going to win. So we decided to strategically frame it as more of like, look at this evidence-based tool that increases access and outcomes for mental health. Yes, it's the arts, but it's evidence-based and it's going to make everything better, which, gross generalization. But that was our strategic framing. And so different framings will work in different states based on, what successes and challenges you have. Other questions? Yes.
So a resolution doesn't have a fiscal note attached to it. And so am I correct in imagining that this is just the first step in ongoing legislation that you're planning to introduce to actually enact this in some financially meaningful way? And can you tell us a little bit about your plans?
Yes. So if I may summarize, this is a resolution. There's no money attached to it. Okay, got the thumbs up, which is correct. So it's the first domino. And so what this does is it normalizes the conversation of using the arts for health in Georgia. And so we're going to go back to the table with Todd Jones and other representatives in June and be like, all right, what appropriation makes sense? I have some ideas, but it's too soon to say. So, well, why don't I share some ideas and you can let me know what you think of them. I think one idea is around arts in healthcare settings, because they spoke to the fact that that was something that they desired. And I think that that is something that the workforce, that there's so many artists, and now with the NOAA licensure or the NOAA certification, there's a workforce ready. There's also in Chicago, they have the city of Chicago. Anyone with an arts background is now eligible to be a community health worker. So looking at the language of that Chicago did, the leader out there is Claire Rice, the Amy equivalent, if there is such a thing. Her name's Claire Rice, and I'm talking to her about what talking points to bring up. I think that those, I think definitely a healthcare focus will be probably the conversation. I didn't want to say that because I don't want to be quoted on it, but we're brainstorming here. So yeah, thank you. That was a great question. Other questions? Oh,
thank you. So I think about how the reason that orange juice is associated with breakfast is because a group of orange growers at some point said, we have a lot of oranges. Let's make juice and let's tell people that it's a great way to start their day and give them energy and nutrients or something. And so when we think about how we talk about all of this, what's our pitch to the everyday person so that they feel like I need protein every day, I need to drink 8 glasses of water, and I need this many arts experiences per week to be at optimal health. It's a little bit of a silly framing, but I think it's a good thought experiment, and I'd be curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, thank you. I know that Jill Sonke's research has suggested that in ways of thinking of like get to the gym, like how can I make some art? Um, so how I think about it, and I tested this with Dr. Monica Parker, and she was suspicious, but so, nobody's neurologist. But my theory was that the worse you are at the art, the more the better it is for your brain because you're creating more synapses. Again, not neurologist approved. Um, um, but that was my way of saying that. Like, I I think the biggest challenge that I overcome is this concept of excellence. You know, when I sit down to the piano, it has to be flawless, and I'm really trying to fight that idea because you know, the more I think that, the less Judy Collins there is. And the less Judy Collins is, it's a sad world. So I would say that would be my first thought, is to try to find ways to bring down concepts of excellence in art. Because, I mean, I love excellent art, and there's a time and a space for it, right? There's a time and a space for creative arts therapy. There's a time and a space for everyday hobbies. And, you know, you don't have to be Martha Graham to enjoy and do beautiful dance. So, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for your work and the concepts and strategies that you're helping us to understand and how we can make a difference in the arts. And I think that's what we're all here to try to do, is to make a difference with the arts. And I'm a musician and vocalist, and one way that I think, you know, I relate to the Judy Collins thing, especially, it is like music for social change, you know, the civil rights movement. I did a whole series of lecture in the Dudley Library in Massachusetts, Boston, Massachusetts, on history through song. And it talked about, you know, how music really affects our history and how we can develop social change. So to, you know, be able to recognize that we do have power for change. And, you know, I've gone out at some of these protest things and started singing my songs, as some of you might have heard the freedom song I did when I presented on the Arts Roundtable. So we all have a voice.
How are we on time? A few more questions? Yes. All right. A few more questions. Okay. Mm. Yes, agreed. It's about the process, not the product. Other reflections, questions? Yes. More impressive than Georgia. Yes, so Maine, the NEA did a big survey across the country that said, you know, what percentage of people participate in the arts, and Maine was one of the top states at 71% of the population. Number two, yes. So really impressive statistic. Mhm. Okay. The possibility that the art that the schools in Maine are a big contributor to this big statistic. We don't know. Yes. Yes. Uh-huh.
We have an aging population here too.
Okay, aging populations play a factor as well. Okay, I think that wraps it up. So thank you all so much and reach out and keep it up.